Letting investors and public sector decision makers focus on facilitating the power sector recovery program in Nigeria are meeting in Abuja, the country's capital, to discuss ways of moving ongoing projects forward. The summit is addressing the most recent updates in the power sector recovery program and the Electricity Reform Act. It is also considering how Nigeria's gas economy and regional infrastructural projects will impact both jobs and socio-economic development in the country. Of interest are Nigeria's gas-independent power producer landscape, renewable energy development, energy infrastructures, off-grid financing, the significance of successful project delivery, and the role of international investors in achieving the objectives. At the opening, the Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Babatunde Raji Fashola, said the footprints of solar system is spreading all over the country and commended the ongoing work of the Rural Electrification Agency.
We've been joined in the studio by two participants at the summit, Simon Gosling and Jonathan Sanayaula. You can correct me if you will. Welcome to the program. We appreciate having you here at Arise News Now. We'd like to know, how is the summit going this year? It's been in effect for a few years now.
Absolutely. This is our 6th year running this particular program. It always has around 300 people. We designed the conference so that it has around 300 delegates. We're not interested in people who are not really bankable, credible investors. In fact, we actively encourage people that don't fit a certain criteria not to attend. So this conference is not all about us making money. It's about making sure that the government has access to the right kind of investors who have proven themselves in the market and are really doing, a successful not just in Nigeria, but across Africa.
And of course, you're talking about success. What's your success story in Africa and why?
We don't have a success story, but we're privileged enough to work with governments that have lots of success stories. I think if you look at South Africa, the renewable energy program has been a tremendous success. I mean, it's in a difficult position right now, but we're looking at ways of helping the government to resolve those issues. And I think the investment community is excited that that is finally moving forward. You look at Sierra Leone, they've got a huge renewable energy program which is moving forward. ECOWAS is driving a lot of that. But of course, the main economy is Nigeria. I mean, right now you're looking at Nigeria possibly being the most attractive investment destination on the planet.
Why?
In terms of economies of scale. I mean, we work with emerging markets, or what we call growing economies, around the world. So with the governments of Latin America. But the opportunities there are not as great as here in Nigeria. You look at, I mean, if we take the tomato sector, for example, the tomato sector in Nigeria here has the largest land mass of tomato growers, the third largest land mass of tomato growers, but is the least efficient in terms of output, whereas the Netherlands has one of the smallest land masses for tomato growers, but is the most efficient and actually has the largest output of all the 25 top growing economies. So if Nigeria can correct its agricultural sector by getting energy right, transport infrastructure right, access to the right kind of technologies, then it will easily become the #1 producer of tomatoes. Now that is just one example. That is why Nigeria is the most attractive market
Basically
right
to
now.
lay down the infrastructure properly so that it can diversify.
Exactly, and you've got politicians that are now really pushing the role of energy in these markets.
All right, Jonathan, I mean, your company also is responsible for providing energy for Nigeria. What's your success story like? What impact have you made so far?
We've made appreciable impact in the sense that we've gained access to, and we are building a $500 million liquefied natural gas plant, which we got the GSAA, that is the gas supply and aggregation agreement, signed off between Greenville and Total Upstream back in August. So essentially what that does for the market is it deepens the natural gas market. And as you know, natural gas essentially is majorly for power production. And our people say power brings prosperity. So as we produce this natural gas, we produce via the virtual pipeline system, meaning that we truck natural gas to the nooks and crannies of this country. stranded assets up in the north that don't have access to pipeline gas, nor have access to natural gas. Natural gas brings your cost of production down, so our industries are able to compete efficiently, generate jobs and wealth for our citizenry. So that's a massive one for us. We've got 7 trains, 3 trains are already on ground, raring to go. We've brought the first set of liquefied natural gas vehicles, that is NGV vehicles, into Africa via this investment. So it's a big one for us, and it helps also to reduce flaring of gas. And as you know, Nigeria is gas rich. We've got about 183 TCF, and that can last us for the next 100 years at the current run rate. So we should be able to benefit fully from the use of gas that we have in abundance. Countries like Saudi Arabia power on crude oil because they've got it in abundance. So why can't we use our gas to generate power? So everything we need to be in the league of developed economies is what we have. So unfortunately, we are having the political might, we are having policies like the gas policy that just got signed, and we've got the enabling environment in terms of law that have been passed. The Minister of Petroleum made mention of the Electrification Act of 2005, that everything that needs to enable our economy is there. So what we need more is making more impact, executing more efficiently, and creating the enabling environment. The power guys yesterday spoke about the need for cost-reflective tariff. So when it's cost-reflective, then investors will come more, and then we'll benefit.
Speaking of investors, how has this Power Summit enticed and created incentive for stakeholders and foreign investors?
Well, I think what we do is we get the information to the investors. In terms of enticing people, I mean, Nigeria does that naturally by itself. I think if, you know, there has been quite a significant change in the last 2 years. 2 years ago, there was a run on Nigeria in terms of how, you know, every investor wanted to be here. And then it slowed down significantly. There was a dip in interest because the privatization everybody thought was going to be so smooth, but in reality the scale of the opportunity here is so vast, it's never going to be smooth. It's going to take much longer, and the government is putting a lot of money into correcting those issues, and I think the private sector now sees that the government is moving in the right direction. So there is a resurgence coming through, and I think you'll see a significant uplift in foreign investment. What we should touch on is, following on what you're talking about, social economic development. One of the important conversations which has been happening here is in the off-grid space. Now again, looking back 2 years ago, if you started talking about off-grid in Nigeria, people would have probably laughed at you, really. You know, whereas today, it's a crucial part of the government's plan to bring power to the people. So it's great to see these conversations going on and to see some really bankable investors here, you know, who are doing things. We ourselves, we're a conference company, but we're financing our own energy projects. We're financing a microgrid in Sierra Leone. We're preparing to finance another microgrid in Guinea-Bissau, and we're also financing a project here in Nigeria in Borgu Kingdom with Pan-Africa Solar. So we use the profits of our conferences to finance these small programs. And the minister was very generous. You know, it's incremental power, but every little bit helps. So I think you're seeing a shift towards actually the importance of getting power to the people. So what's great about me being here is that I know this message will get to the people, and the people need to grasp this opportunity. You can't rely on government to do everything. You know, it's important that the people take some responsibility and actually go out there, because there are affordable solutions out there which people can get, communities can get, and if they want to get them, then they can do it for themselves and actually start to turn those into micro-industries for their own townships.
So it's more attainable for the private sector than it ever was.
Absolutely.
Before.
And of course, Senor Lu, you know, there's this debate about, you know, Nigeria having so much gas reserves, but we are not harnessing it enough to provide power for us. We're still generating between 3,000 to 4,000 megawatts. And a lot of people want to ask the question, why?
Well, it's very simple. The current installed capacity for power generation is about 12,000 megawatts. Most of that 12,000 thermal, meaning about 10,000 megawatts run on gas. Okay, we have hydro about 8,000 coming up. So Now, what limits power to most of our homes essentially, from the conference we gathered yesterday that we've got about 7,000 capacity, 7,000 megawatts when it comes to transmission. And the chain is very simple. You generate from generation, you transmit, from transmit, you distribute. Now, there are a lot of losses, okay, along the line. Now, eventually what gets to homes as at this morning is about 4,000 megawatts. That is a far cry from where we need to be. Okay, by world standard, we are supposed to be, with a population of about 160 million, 183 million essentially, it's 1 million to 1 gigawatt. So essentially about the best standard, we are supposed to be on 180 gigawatts, but we are on 3 or 4 gigawatts. Now, you need investment. The investment gap on a yearly basis should be about $10 billion to get to where we need to be.
That
now,
should be a piece of cake.
Well, it should be when people pay the right price for the product. Now, when we fully liberalize the markets, investors will come. You can't cap distribution margins and expect those distributors to pay those gas suppliers, which runs on international pricing. That is the mismatch. So as quickly as we remove that mismatch, I think power will be available abundantly for everyone. So yes, we have the gas assets. Yes, we have enough gas to power the country for the next 100 years, but then you need investors to bring in the cash to make this work.
So you think 20,000 megawatts by 2020 is feasible?
Well, this is 2017, okay? And you're on 4 gigawatts, okay? Now, 3 years, I don't say anything is impossible, but I would say cautious optimism. You have the investment coming in with the wherewithal, you liberalize the market, we'll move close to that. But I can't say exactly from hindsight, you can't say exactly you'll be on point by 2020. Because
we'd have you on record if that was the case.
Yeah, I know.
And of course, what are your future plans and recommendations as we move forward?
Yeah, I think it was touched on yesterday by various people. Looking at the off-taker is crucial. There was a lot of conversations about cost-reflective tariffs, but actually, there is so much gas here. Why doesn't the industry and the sector really push on downstream petrochemical manufacturing? If you look at those off-takers, then suddenly you're building new industries that create thousands of jobs. And what they then do actually is they create far more wealth. So 100 times more jobs, 10 times more wealth, and really bankable off-takers. I think you've got to look at the broader economy in gas in Nigeria, and the opportunity is vast.
All right.
Well, we'd like to thank you, Jonathan and Simon, for being on Arise News Now and for your wonderful insight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
To other news now, tropical storm Nate has killed at least 22 people in Central America.